because of the fluidity and the fact that there is a lot of planning going on, I cannot give you any further details at this time about the current situation on the ground, but I can say that more broadly what we are seeing in Mali, in Algeria, reflects the broader strategic challenge. But when you deal with these relentless terrorists, life is not in any way precious to them. But when this incident is finally over, we know we face a continuing, ongoing problem.
It's clear that they began this operation before the French began the counter-battery work, or began to send the French Foreign Legion in. So this operation has been planned for some time.
Clearly there were surveillance, they were obviously trying to figure out the security footprints there and plan their attack, and that would take some time, especially at the level and brazenness that they undertook in this particular event.
You know, we have an administration that declared when it came into office an end, or at least abolished the phrase, a global war on terror, as a way either to minimize it or not to seem anti-Islamic or whatever. Well, you can abolish the phrase, but that doesn't mean a global war on terror isn't here and isn't being directed against the West, and it is. In fact, our own Secretary of Defense said so earlier today, that the terrorism is happening everywhere. It's happening in Mali, happening in Algeria, obviously in Pakistan and Afghanistan, Somalia, Yemen, and elsewhere. This is what the Bush administration had talked about and what it created an infrastructure to deal with. I think what we've got to understand in the case of Algeria, we ask ourselves, why did the Algerians attack right away? They went through a war for a decade in the 90s with radical Islamists who wanted to take over Algeria. It was a bloody, a terrible war, tens of thousands of dead, and they weren't about to stand around and create a sound stage for terrorists had they just surrounded it and negotiated. I think they knew very well it would cost a lot of casualties, but they were not prepared to do as we do in the West, as we did with the Iranian hostage crisis, wait for a year and a half. They struck, and I think the news is going to be rather mixed when we hear about the final results.
But it is dispiriting to see the administration stand back and allow the Algerian special forces, whatever that means, go in and, it looks like, not surprisingly, perhaps botch the job. You would have liked, and perhaps, again, there's much we don't know, and perhaps there were American forces on the scene, but from what we know right now, we didn't respond and they did, and that's not a good thing.
And the British have complained, and the Japanese, that the operation went on so quickly they weren't even informed, let alone asked to give any assistance. In Syria, it's more a humanitarian issue. Here, it's a question of a vast no man's land that stretches essentially across an empty Sahara. That's where all this is happening. The north part of Mali isn't exactly downtown Manhattan. And the photographs that you show, the aerial, the space pictures of the facility in Algeria, there are no houses around there. This is empty land, no man's land, and it could be the new haven for these terrorists, and I think that's why the entire West, it isn't only America, in fact the Europeans are the ones who are closer and more exposed, are going to do something about it, starting with the French acting in Mali. I would say our number one goal is to make sure that these terrorists do not have a haven in the no man's land, and at least heavily support the French and any others who go after them, because once established, they are going to be a threat to every country in North Africa, every country in the Middle East, ultimately Europe and us.
The most beautiful girl I've ever met. Not because of her physical beauty, but the beauty of her character and who she is. You take, you know, the love of my life. I wonder how it would be like if she was still here. I wondered what tonight would be like if, you know, we talked about it a day.
Manti is the victim of that hoax, and he will carry that with him for a while. In many ways, Manti was the perfect mark, because he is a guy who is so willing to believe in others.
I did hear strange stories when I was a psychiatrist, but this one, I'd probably resign the case, because there are only 3 explanations. The guy is dangerously naive, deeply deceptive, or delusional. Dangerously naive, but then how could he have spoken about her twice after he learned it was a hoax? The deceptive still is out there, but it requires some craziness to think that this isn't going to be discovered. This is if a person dies, it's checkable. And the last is, I mean, you almost have to go that he's delusional, but obviously there's nothing in his life that would indicate he is. I mean, when he goes after a quarterback to tackle him, he doesn't, run after a ghost at the other end of the field. He goes, the guy lives in the real world, it seems. I have no explanation. I guess the real question is the only one we ever asked since Watergate. What did he know and when did he know it, and who was behind this?
So how does this end, Charles?
He's
up for the NFL draft.
It's going to end on Oprah.
This has been a Sunfish production.